Woman defined, a woman mocked, and a pope died. Welcome to Mark and Pete, two blokes with half an opinion. And here is the first of our thoughts.
Would you Adam and Eve it? Almighty God created Adam, and he also made Eve. Use loving seed where the other could conceive. Where one has many headaches and wants sexual reprieve, the other is always henpecked and on constant sick leave. Yes, you can decide, a man or a woman. What is one and what is the other? Well, the UK Supreme Court rules that the legal definition of a woman is based on biological sex. What a revelation. Yes, indeed, judges say the concept of sex is binary, while cautioning that the landmark ruling should not be seen as a victory of one side over the other. Now, it does mean that transgender people still have legal protection from discrimination, so the courts say. Mr. Pete, I ask you, what do you think of this new ruling, and has common sense finally been installed?
Well, yes, I think that it is a common sense ruling. I think that they do still have legal protections because you can't discriminate against them because they choose to dress as a woman or maybe have had surgery of some sort in order to make them more like a woman if they're a man, and of course vice versa. But the UK Supreme Court, in making this legal definition, means that there should be an end to things like it's a hate crime to point out someone's biological sex. That's what should be the outflow of it. And I think eventually it will be. I think there will still be arrests, still be court cases. But with this definition in place, it will be much easier to defend. And of course, the main thing is that we can say, well, look, if something is a woman-only space, that means you can't go in there if you're biologically a man. And I think that will protect women's only spaces, women's only sports. That's ramifications that I think will flow from this, but it will take time because, you know, the way our legal system works, well, it's slow, but also the rulings are spread on a case-by-case basis. This is an important precedent, though, for decisions to come. So, yeah, maybe the trans activists aren't pleased and they're spray painting some statues in Westminster, yes. But I think, you know, despite that's to be expected. But I think actually this is, as you say, a common sense decision.
Yes. Well, what's interesting, many people have commentated on this topic, no surprise. But I'm going to sort of quote somebody in particular. Dr. Michael Foran is a lecturer in public law at Glasgow University, and he was cited in court recently. And he said that the decision itself is attempting to answer a question about what the meaning of the words sex, man, and a woman mean in the Equality Act. Now, he goes on to say that the Supreme Court has resoundingly and unanimously said that the words man, woman, and sex in the Equality Act are tied to biology, not gender recognition certificates. I think that's the significant point here, isn't it? That however you self-identify, the whole point is that where even politicians have struggled to know what a woman is or what even a man is, surely now it helps them to have that point of reference, and it also makes it very clear and protects sexes. So, for example, if a woman is a biological woman, clearly, for example, she has rights, whether that's to go to the toilet in women's toilets, whether it be meaning that basically men cannot go in there, and any other form of engagement. So one of the things that's always been a concern, even in places like prisons, where, say, for example, a man who identifies as a woman could go into a woman's prison and so on. So surely, really, this is good for all parties, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it's good, but there's a great sensitivity around the subject. Now, this idea of allowing people to self-identify, you can see how it comes from the idea that you want to be kind to people. You know, you want to allow people to identify as they want because, you know, Why impinge on someone else's freedom? But there are situations where you have to impinge on freedom. Like there's always been the case that biological males were not allowed into female-only spaces, and now this then within that context makes sense because there are always limits on our freedom. But where it's just someone's whim or maybe it's bigotry, then they're protected under the law. If that's by which I mean transgender individuals are. So to me, it just makes perfect sense. I don't always agree with Supreme Court rulings in the UK. Famously on Mark and Pete, we disagree with ones to do with Brexit. But in this case, I think this is a right decision.
It is true to say that some campaigners, those particularly on transgender, saw this particular ruling as being a sad move. In fact, some of them were shocked by the ruling, and believe that it's effectively stripping them of their rights under the Act, the Equality Act, to be a woman. But at the end of the day, and I know that this is going to probably be controversial, the fact is that we have seen many examples of perhaps abuse, where essentially people who were originally a man who then transitioned to being a woman. And there have been many situations where biological women have been under threat or have been attacked, etc. And I can see both sides of the equation here, but surely when it comes to safety of individuals and respect, nobody's going to take anything away from how you identify. But surely rights, this is the equality rights thing, I think is the key to this, isn't it? So the Equality Act, we believe, is a good thing. Well, we move on. But, I must admit that this particular story certainly
Yes.
makes a mockery of things. Being a mimic can be an amusing profession, pulling many an exaggerated expression. But if the gesture is mean in the way the victim is seen, it may leave a lasting impression. Yes, well, so
Yes, it can.
says
Yeah.
the actress Aimee Lou Wood, who called out recently Saturday Night Live sketch that decided to impersonate her by exaggerating her features with prosthetic teeth, both mean and unfunny to the impressionists. Well, I know that comedy is subjective, but Mr. Pete, what do you think about Aimee Lou Wood's claim that this was rather cruel? And what's your thoughts on dark comedy and many other things like that in terms of how you
Well,
portray someone?
I think dark comedy is a good thing. I think you should be able to have freedom of expression. We don't really have that legally in Britain enforced in the same way as it is in the United States of America under their constitution. Of course, they have freedom of speech, which includes freedom of expression. But I think that we should have it, and to a large extent, it's allowed. It's accepted that mockery is allowable, even if it does offend. But I just don't find it funny if someone is simply cruel. That's not making a point. You're just making someone upset for the sake of it. So you take Aimee Lou Wood, who has a distinctive look. She's a pretty young actress, but she has rather large teeth, which is part of her overall look. Now, I say that, of course, very knowledgeably, although when looking at this story, I had to actually look up a picture of her on Google because I'd never seen it before. Now, be that as it may, that's, I think, a good description of her. But in this making fun of her, they just play on the fact that she's got an English accent
Yes.
and large teeth, both of which,
Yes.
are they really funny? So fake teeth, dodgy accent, just unnecessarily cruel mockery for nothing. And I don't know how it went down. What I'm hearing is that actually the joke really landed with rather a thud and didn't. I think maybe they're regretting it. But
Well, possibly.
she's responded. She's responded anyway by saying it was mean and unfunny.
Yes.
I mean, I think if they had a conscience, they'd realise that it was wrong. And in fact, there has been an apology made. I don't know if it's an official apology, but the people who portrayed like that, haven't they apologised? Is that right from your research?
Well, is a bit of a shallow apology.
Oh,
Now,
was
the
it?
interesting thing
Okay.
here is that professional impressionists have actually come out and talked about this. So, the Dead Ringers star Jan Ravens, who's just been in the market and been an entertainer for many, many years, doing many impressions of well-known politicians, actors, and many other well-known celebrities in the world, has said that the first misstep of the writers behind the Saturday Night Sketch was not reading the room, meaning it was a bad idea to joke about someone's appearance in a sketch. So essentially, the way, as you say, that the character with fake-looking teeth, bulbous eyes, and looking rather strange. Now, the thing here is in the wake of all that, Jan herself said that she's been talking about how she was bullied at school and being the butt of the joke, meaning about her physical appearance. So then you think, why would you do that joke? Meaning, why would the writers of the
Yeah.
show decide to go that way? Now, it's not unusual for people, either past or even present, to pick on somebody's appearance. If somebody has a big nose or big ears or something like that, or a droopy chin, whatever it is, the fact of the matter is, it is a bit of a cheap shot. Where I think it becomes funny is if, say, for example, and we off air we're talking about this. We're going to sort of probably
Yeah.
date ourselves here, but in the 1980s, there was a well-known um, comedy show called Spitting Image, and it used to parody lots of politicians, most notably Margaret Thatcher, and she was portrayed as a man, not as a woman. There seems to be a theme
Yes.
here.
First trans
But
prime minister.
the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is the reason that she was done that by the almost bravado, the testosterone type fuel injected Margaret Thatcher was forthright, and her tone of voice was such that she seemed often insincere when she spoke. And so, of course, people would play on that mannerism, but it was also playing on the mannerism of having a big nose and a wild blonde hair. But it was cruel, and I will say that although times have
Yeah.
changed, my view was that it was very funny, but I think it had to be said, wouldn't you say, Mr. Pete, that perhaps the
But it
cruel
was
element is not something that's really accepted today.
it was cruel, but it was making the point that she was very dominant. It was meant to be
Yes,
the country was meant to be led by the cabinet, not
yes,
just the prime minister, but she dominated them like a powerful business executive in a suit. Which that was the point they were making. So, although I thought it was cruel, I thought it was making a point, and the emphasis, if you looked at it, the emphasis is on her being too much like a man and browbeating all the men into subservience. And I suspect that she liked it.
certainly.
I mean, I think that's probably how she saw herself.
Yeah.
But there were other portrayals. We happen to remember that when we were talking about this topic. But I think if your point is just to make fun of the appearance and that's it, you think, well, what you haven't really. That's the heights of comedy. Let's just put it that way. I don't think that's a brilliant moment. And just laughing at someone's appearance, especially in this case, someone with big teeth. You can imagine someone being bullied about that at school, and it brings back memories. Is it worth it really? And then other people, I mean, if it had been someone with a stutter and they just decided to make fun of them, I think people will have picked up on it more than they have in this
Mm.
case, because that's a disability, whereas having big teeth isn't really. Um, I don't think it's acceptable, but I think it should be allowed. As you know, Mark, I'm a bit of a free speech
Oh,
absolutist. I
yeah.
think you should be able to say anything
Oh, well.
because that's it, as soon as you start down the censorship route, then you end up with worse problems. Basically, the people in power being able to stop
Yeah.
you subverting their agenda.
Well, quite.
And comedy is one of the ways that that's done.
Well,
So I think you've got to allow it, but they should have a conscience themselves.
Well, there you go. Well, we come on to a somber note. It's one that we alluded to at the beginning of the
Mm.
show, and it's something that's breaking as we produce this show. Shaping the Roman Catholic Church. The gathering folk in St. Peter's Square depicts the circle of life and loss, and from every sphere they say a prayer to worship the Catholic cross. Well, as we all know, Pope Francis has died at the age of 88. After 12 years as a spiritual leader of the Roman Catholic Church, we now trigger a mourning period which involves centuries old rites. Now, Mr. Pete, I ask you, first of all, that this particular election of a new pontiff, uh, something that will happen over the next 15 to 20 days, depending on how the election goes. But whilst we can reflect on Pope Francis and what his tenure was as the Pope, I think what we should also do is think about the state of the Catholic Church, but more importantly, the opportunity for the new Pope. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Yes. Well, look at the state of the Catholic Church. Yes, I think now is an opportunity for change because you can look at the state of the Roman Catholic Church. It has, I suppose, a disconnect with culture. That's not necessarily a bad thing because maybe it has something to say to our current culture that we need to hear. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. But you need to have some sort of inroad into it in order to be able to be heard. And I think under Francis we saw various attempts made to modernize, to bring the church kicking and screaming into the 21st century. But I believe they were leveled at the wrong areas, changing your beliefs. So we've got the same God as Islam was a comment. Not in those words, but that was the import of what he was saying, suggesting that the church might bless same-sex marriages. Now, none of these things resulted in any changes. It was ineffective. But going forward, choosing a new pope now is it's a great opportunity to have a pope who comes into place will stick to what the church has got to offer, its fundamental message, to make sure it's absolutely clear the gospel message is the heart of all, excuse me, all the Christian churches, including the Roman Catholics, and yet change, lighten up, be freer in the way that people express their worship. So you could free up the use of different types of music, which was tightened up actually under Pope Benedict, to limit the use of certain types of music, and also allow for people to say the Latin Mass if that's the way they express their spirituality. So now is a key point at which, with a good nuanced view of what it means to change and bring the church up to date, in the way that I've just alluded to, which, I spent years as a church leader, so I know something of this, although not in the Roman Catholic Church. Now is a great opportunity for change. I think Francis did make those mistakes that I alluded to, but it's still sad when someone, sad when someone dies, and especially someone who's devoted their life to serving others as he did.
Oh, well, quite. And when we think about the future, so the new Pope is voted by a college of cardinals, so a group of the church's most
Yes.
senior officials who are all men, are all appointed by the Pope, and who are usually all ordained bishops. Now, the interesting thing is this. We talk about the future because although there are currently 252 Catholic cardinals, only 135 are eligible to cast ballots. Why? Because those who are over the age of 80, yes, they cannot vote. Yes, that's correct. Yes. So the point is that between the Pope's death and the election of his successor, the College of Cardinals governs the Church. Now, what will happen is that there'll be a mourning period. It's typically between 15 to 20 days. And then, of course, we can have the vote. Now, I'm not suggesting that that they definitely go for a very young person, but clearly there's an opportunity. It's interesting, isn't it, that a high percentage typically tend to be Italian. So when you look at the history, and this goes back for many many centuries, of course. Of the 266 popes chosen to date, 217 have been from Italy. So we're not saying that that's going to happen, but it's interesting on the statistics. So whoever comes in, this is an opportunity, folks. Yes, this is where we think that there is a great chance to move, the Catholic Church forward and into the 21st century, and we look forward to seeing the results. So as we think about this, and from impressions and new rulings on sex, etc., and we're going to have a new pope. I wonder what our public think, our our glorious audience thinks about, what's going to come up in the next episode. I'd love to hear what you'd like us to talk about. What are the sort of things you
Yes,
want us to talk about and it's affecting your world?
Yes, get in touch with the show. Just go to markandpete.com. Make sure you're subscribed and follow this show, Mark and Pete, so that you get the updates. And that means you can make a comment if you're signed in like that on this, and in fact on every episode. But until next time, it's goodbye from Mark and myself, and catch you next time.